Greetings. Today we're going to be talking about the Amazon starter, Freezing Arrow, and more specifically, starting with Exploding Arrow is going to be the play. Really nice build because it's a range build as compared to the other great starter for the Amazon, which is the Charge Strike Amazon. And Charge Strike into, obviously, Lightning Fury is a really good setup to progress into. However, I kind of feel like this build has a lot going for it now too, because one of the big changes with both Freezing Arrow and Exploding Arrow was the reduction in mana cost. 50% reduction in 2.4 is going to be huge. So one of the cool things about this build is it is skill-based, and yes, you need a little bit of attack speed to be able to hit certain breakpoints, but aside from that, it's a skill-based build. This means you deal a lot of damage with mediocre budget level gear, which is why I'm saying it's such a great starter. Going to go through the progression here, starting at level 13, ladder start, you're not going to have a lot of gear, but that's okay. This build does very well with just like 3 tier runes. You're going to go to the Countess, farm the Countess in Act 1 to get these tier runes and put them in like any bows. And as you can see, we just need a little bit of resist, a little bit of run speed, maybe some mana, and give our merc some items, right? So yeah, it's a great ladder start. The alternate is if you already have gear, if this is your second character, obviously give this character the Death Guard, Death Sash, give it a lot of attack speed, poison resist, cannot be frozen, and all that stuff. If you have the Angelics, dual Angelic Rings would be great with this setup, and then tier mask with the Wither String. Going to allow you to hit the 9 frame, very nice for this point in the progression. Now, when you get a little bit further down the line, oh yeah, skills, before I go on, both of these setups that I have been talking about are going to put 6 points in Fire Arrow, no more than 6. It's very important because if you put more, you won't have enough to spend on other things down the line. And then you'll start putting points in Exploding Arrow, and Exploding Arrow is going to be your main DPS because it deals AoE damage, and it will get synergy from Fire Arrow, which is quite nice. So both of these builds, the same skill setup. Then when you go down the line, there are a couple of options. The easiest option to put together for any setup, ladder start or non-ladder start, you can put this build together, is running the edge bow. So once you get to level 25, you can put this together. Very cheap bow, tier Tal Am. And again, because our damage is skill-based, it doesn't matter what bow base you use. It could deal 0 physical damage as long as it hit it procs the elemental damage, from your attack, your Exploding Arrow cast, right? You'll be fine. So you don't need to worry about attack rating, you don't need to worry about physical damage or leech or any of that, because we're basically just using healing potions and the prayer aura from our mercenary at this point. So you will get an Act 2 mercenary, which is quite nice. And yes, we're going to be putting together the lore helm for more plus to skills. Mana after each kill is going to be, as aforementioned, a really great stat. And notice you have a tier rune in the edge bow. You have a +2 mana after each kill affix on the lore. So even though we dropped our tier bow, this still maintains a really good level of plus mana after each kill at a higher attack speed, no less, because while the edge bow doesn't have enhanced damage, it does have a lot of increased attack speed. So this allows you to hit still the 9 frame breakpoint, which is quite nice, in combination with the Death set. Now, one thing that you can do is upgrade your Death Guard Demon Hide to Demon Hide, because at level 29, of course, so keep that level in mind. You don't want to do it too early, but this will get you 4 extra potion slots, quite nice. The Death Guard Hand and Sash, you will farm up in cow runs in normal. Killing the Cow King there, you have a really high chance to drop both of these items. That's why I've included them. And you'll probably find a Sanders from the Cow King as well, which is part of the build. Gives you a lot of faster run walk and some of the stats that we're going to need for our build. The peace comes in quite nice here, +2 to skills, again giving us even more damage, faster hit recovery, cold resist. So the interesting affix here is chance to cast level 15 Valkyrie. Unfortunately, unless you have a hard point in Valkyrie, the Valkyrie spawns, but like despawns after a couple of seconds. So we don't have the points to spare for this particular build because you are synergizing your main attack, and that is more important at this stage. However, down the line, like after level 50 about, you might have, if you're keeping the peace chest piece in the progression, there is a point at which we could make use of this affix. So pretty cool stuff. Rings, we're just going to go for plus mana again because we are using an insight. Can't believe I skipped over this little tidbit here. To keep, once you reach level 27, you get a mana battery basically. It's going to give you a lot of mana regeneration. However, it's based on your maximum mana regeneration is. So we make sure we get a few like plus the mana charms and plus the mana rings to increase our mana regeneration and make sure that we can continue casting our exploding arrow. Now you may be wondering, what else can I do with this setup? If it's, you know, a non-ladder start, this is my second character, I've got a little bit more gear. One choice would be Vidala's, because Vidala's set gives piercing attack, and piercing attack works really well with the exploding arrow and freezing arrow type builds because you pierce targets, and as you hit the individual targets behind them, you get multiple procs, and because they're all AoE, they will give you more and more damage in a concentrated area, and you will deal increased damage basically. However, Vidala is a no-go in my opinion. It's just too slow of an attack. Even though the set works out fairly well, it's just too slow. Better pick, in my opinion, if you have the gearing, is to go the Iratha set. Iratha gives you faster run walk, piercing attack. Even though it's less piercing attack, 24% is still a decent amount for starter, and as you'll see later, it is enough to cap us out at 100% with all of our piercing bonuses later on. But you can see here you can carry over your edge bow into this level of the progression. You can keep a dark glow ring mail to give you even more resistances, because one of the cool things about the Iratha set is giving those max resistances up to plus 90. It's insane. And it also gives a lot of resistances in general, making sure that you don't have to gear those. Attack speed on the gloves is a nice touch, allows you to hit a very fast attack again. And the other pieces are pretty held over. There is a note here, you can run a different bow if you have it. The Storm Strike gives piercing attack, and notably also gives +8 to strength. One of the mods on the edge bow is +10 to all attributes. And this is what is allowing us to keep a lower level of strength and still be able to wear the Iratha set, basically. So you will need a +2 strength charm if you are using the Storm Strike, but it does give you, you know, almost 50% piercing attack in total, even though the attack itself will be at 11 frames instead of 9 frames. When testing in the cow level, this turned out to be a better weapon. It cleared, I don't know, 30 seconds faster. So if you have it on hand, I would use it. I did also test the Doomslinger, which is the same breakpoint, gives +1 to skills, even more piercing attack, but it doesn't come with strength. So in my opinion, and it has a later level requirement. You'll see soon at level 33, as early as level 33, we can transition to a different bow. So this is more of a stopgap kind of situation where you just use what's best and what's easy to get. And that, in my opinion, if you have the Storm Strike, that's great. If not, just use the edge bow. Now, progressing on, we are moving on up to about, 33 is when the first level you can put on your Kuko+Iratha+Peace. I think I pronounced that right. Anyway, the Kuko is amazing bow here. So it's got a lot of plus skills. We put a Shale Rune in it. I think it's worth socketing with your first Larzik, something to think about doing for this character's progression once you acquire it. Might be a little bit more expensive to trade for, but hopefully you've found something of value at this point that you can use to trade off. And if you haven't, you can continue leveling with the edge bow until you get to like level 40, 50, whatever, and you have the currency to trade for it. The big mod here is the piercing attack, 50%. And that 50% combined with the Iratha set and the 24% there, plus a level 1 pierce, that's over 100, right? So it feels amazing to play at this stage. You still have the peace bow, or sorry, the peace chest piece for the plus skills. And even though we don't have, again, the hardpoint in Valkyrie, we have a much higher saturated fire arrow to synergize our exploding arrow, so we're dealing a lot more DPS. Now, level 40 might be thinking about running like Act 2 Nightmare, so probably tomb runs is what the activity you will be doing. But aside from that, maybe just upgrade your mana rings and progress on. So you have two options once you get to the final stage of the starter build. The first iteration is to keep your chest piece and utilize the level 15 Valkyrie on striking. Basically, you have enough skill points now that you can take out that level 1 Valkyrie and make use of the proc to get, a free level 15 Valkyrie, which would be pretty darn cool, in my opinion. However, you do lose a lot of points that you could have been using to, at this point, notably, we will respec to be able to get freezing arrow instead of exploding arrow as our main attack. As you can see here, freezing arrow is an AoE, and it will basically make enemies stand still for a few seconds, which is great, synergized by the cold arrow, of course. And then our secondary will be exploding arrow. So if you run into immunes, this build handles them really well, even though your secondary attack may not deal near as much DPS as your primary. It's still going to feel really good for progressing. Notably, at this point, you can use a Wisdom Draw. It is a slower attack. You'll see here 11 frames versus the 10 frame that you'll have with your Kuko. However, I still think the Kuko wins out because, again, that piercing attack means that you're capped at 100% pierce, whereas with the Wisdom Draw, even though it's like similar DPS on the freezing arrow, it doesn't have the pierce. So it's really up to you what you want to use, whatever's cheaper, right? But at this stage, that's what I would use. You have a second option here. Notably, the peace variation at level 66 can only do Nightmare. It's like Nightmare Cow Runs is the primary activity, but you can do something cool if you want to dip into Hell, is pick up the Treachery. Treachery is a little bit more expensive. Shalethol Limb in a cuirass, like an exceptional base maybe, something a little bit cheaper on the strength side of things, lower requirements. But this gives you a lot of attack speed to, plus the Fade, which gives you the resistances you'll need in Hell difficulty. Granted, you have to get hit. The Venom is really nice at this level because it does give provide a lot of extra DPS compared to what you can do, right? And the Fade also gives damage reduction, which is pretty cool, and curse resistance. So you will need these things if you're dipping your toes into Hell. I would advise like maybe just Act 1 Hell, grinding, maybe Countess runs, something like that, just to get extra runes. Might be pretty cool at this stage, even though you can't teleport. It's still a good build. Notably, I did swap out using a Hell rune and a Town of Scroll portal in the cube. You can remove the Shale rune and put a Tear rune in. This is because with the Treachery, it's not worth it to go to the next breakpoint up. Therefore, you save a little bit of attack speed just by removing your Shale rune and running something different. So we're running the Tear rune for an easy +2 mana after each kill. Yeah, so we are also applying the silk weaves. I think I forgot to mention that with the peace variation as well. So we have this 5 mana after each kill and a little bit of increased mana pool for more regeneration. The mercenary at this point, you might think about, why is that Defiance? Okay, that doesn't quite make sense. I would stick with a prayer mercenary. But if you want, if you get to Act 2 Hell, you can opt for the Holy Freeze. But at this point, just keep the prayer merc. It's going to be really fun, even at this level. Try to get like a Taurasha, something with Life Leech, a nice chest piece perhaps, and then upgrade his weapon to exceptional. That'll also be good to do. And yeah, on the skills for this one, I wouldn't go into the Valkyrie because, again, you don't get the free level 15, so it's probably not worth it. I would just, and you're dipping your toes into hell, so you probably need a higher level secondary hybrid attack with which to deal with immunes a little bit better, so that the gameplay doesn't feel really dull and stale alternately, or you get killed, right? So, yeah. Anyways, I've played all these levels, and the progression felt really good. If I were playing, the verdict is that if I were playing, starting in Amazon in ladder, this is what I would start with now. Just because it's skill-based, it's the attacks are really hard hitting, it's AoE damage, it's range damage, it's really safe, and it goes really well. The main detriment, I would say, is that it is a little bit probably more currency to get the Kuko earlier on, so you might have to work for that. And the downside as well is you do have to use up a respec. But a lot of characters have to do that, respec early on. So this isn't something that's out of the norm per se. But aside from that, like, I would play this any time of day over the Charge Strike into Lightning Fury build as a starter. It's a lot of fun. And the mana cost reduction has done a lot for it, in my opinion. Anyways, thank you. I hope you've enjoyed this overview, and catch you around.